Look, I really like what Konstantin Kisin had to say. He said the arguments about Iran are so polarised that no one wants to admit that several things are true at once. You'd be a fool to not have serious reservations about the idea of a regime change war, especially in the Middle East. You'd also be a fool to allow terrorists funding lunatics to develop nuclear weapons. And he goes on, but he also says, a point that you made, Michael, really, that so far the Trump administration's interventions have been extraordinarily successful in achieving valid objectives within a highly limited scope. The strikes on Iran during the 12-day war achieved destruction of several nuclear facilities. The Venezuela operation decapitated the hostile regime and replaced Maduro with a non-hostile leader. Both also achieved significant don't F with us deterrence globally. And he says that, look, this seems to be the biggest risk that Donald Trump has taken at any time in his first or second term. If it pays off, the reward both domestically and globally will be huge. If it doesn't, and things go south, it could derail his presidency and define his legacy like Iraq did for Blair and Bush. Can I get your thoughts on that? You know, will this risk pay off? I suppose that's the big question. And also your thoughts on this plan for regime change, how successful it could be. And of course, no one knows the answer to this, how long this could go on for.
Well, it's, you know, the Western media and the left and the Democrats, you know, you go back to World War II, you know, by 1941, they'd be saying, how long's this campaign having to go to get rid of Hitler? You know, we're tiring of this war. We've got to stop this fight against Hitler. It's been going on for too long. Too many Britons and Americans and Europeans have been killed. I mean, wars take as long as they take. I mean, you know, because Minot Hammer took 27 minutes to largely destroy the Iranian nuclear facility, because Trump was so successful, people think these things are over in half an hour.
Yeah.
Trump has done the right thing. On one day, he says it might take 3 to 4 days. The next day, he says it might take 4 to 5 weeks. One day, he says, you know, it implies there should be regime change. The next day, he says it's up to the Iranian people. He deliberately confuses people. And this is what the left have got to understand. He's not going to be out there telling Congress a week before the bombing, oh, it's going to start on Saturday at this time. And I mean, this guy plays, as they say, 4D chess. He keeps it confused. I'll tell you exactly what his objectives are, is to bomb the daylights out of the Iranian military, Navy and Air Force. He wants to bring about regime change. Of course he does. Of course that's the ultimate objective. He doesn't necessarily want to say that in black and white terms because of all the reasons we know. But that's the objective here, and so it should be. And the world will be a much, much better place if we don't have the Iranian government at the head of the international terrorist left, and that's what they are. We know they fund the proxies. They know they fund terrorism all around the world. They started a war with their own allies, the Gulf states. I mean, they've handled this very badly so far, the Iranians. So you would expect there to be regime change. It might take a week, it might take 6 weeks, it might take 6 months. But that's the objective of the Americans, and it will be successful in due course because the world can't tolerate being at war with Iran. And for those MAGA people and that clown Tucker Carlson who sort of say, oh, well, you know, Trump said he wouldn't start wars. He's not starting a war. He's finishing one.
Correct.
This war's been going against Iran. It's been going for 4 decades.
Yeah.
Right? They've been saying death to America, death to Israel, death to Britain for 40 years almost. So he's not starting anything. He's ending a war that Iran has had deliberately, actively, subversively for 4 decades. That's what President Trump is doing, yeah.
And what's the US's next objective? Of course, we've seen the action taken in Venezuela. We're now seeing this action being taken out in Iran. What's next? Is Cuba next?
Well, Cuba's next. Yeah, Cuba will fall. And, you know, you go back to Iran for 1 second. There's 90 million people who've been held hostage by this group of Islamic terrorists for almost 40 years. You know, by an accident of birth, we're lucky enough not to have been born in or have to live in Iran. But those poor bastards for 4 decades have lived under this brutal regime. Fast forward to Cuba. Since the Castro family took over, the poor Cubans have lived under this persecution by this communist regime. And it's going to be liberated. It's going to be liberated by the Americans by Christmas time. It'll fall. And again, the world will be a much safer place. If you've got rid of the Venezuelan government, the Cuban government, and the Iranian government, well, I mean, what a wonderful achievement that will be for Trump. And as far as Venezuela is concerned, no, he hasn't got rid of the regime, but you can bet your bottom dollar there will be elections in Venezuela within 2 years, and that Venezuelan government will be swept from office. And they'll have a pro-American democratic government in Venezuela thereafter forever, which is what they're going to have in Cuba. And in the next few months, that's what they're going to have in Iran.
Yeah, well, Senator Lindsey Graham said just yesterday that the US strikes in Iran, speaking about the US strikes in Iran, I should say, he said that Cuba is next. They are going to follow this communist dictatorship in Cuba and their days are numbered. Michael Kroger, thank you so much for your time, former president of the Victorian Liberal Party and Sky News contributor.
Thank you.